in one respect, it's fair for people to be despondent. I mean, I think you're kidding yourself if you say that the result of the US election made absolutely no difference to anything whatsoever. I mean, Trump has signalled very clearly that he wants to go on the offensive on a whole range of areas. And in the case of Palestine, even though many of us have been pointing out how Kamala Harris and Biden supported genocide, Trump's on the record as saying he supports Israel finishing the job. So you'd be a fool if you didn't say that the election of Trump is a bad thing for the world and working people in the United States. That said, of course, it has to be couched within the understanding that the Democrats were not offering working people anything either. And the best you could say of the Democrats is that they were a lesser evil, and a lesser evil is still an evil. And of course, it's precisely the embrace of neoliberal economics and offering working people by the Democrats and by similar so-called left of centre parties around the world that precisely is the breeding ground for the kind of politics that Trump and other sort of so-called populist far-right figures represent. So in that sense, although the terrain is a bit different, the fundamental job of anyone who believes in peace and justice and a sustainable future is to build mass movements for change, and that was going to be true regardless of who won the US presidential election. Yeah, well, look, I just think just blaming the American people for voting for Trump or not voting at all, which is something we should probably talk about because that's also quite significant. It doesn't get you anywhere. Just sort of, it's actually very self-indulgent just to roll around criticising, the average American voter for being, racist and sexist and homophobic and stupid. And I don't, you might have seen there's a meme going around where all the sort of states that where a majority was returned in the Electoral College for Trump, have been sort of labelled as what was it, dumb fuckistan or something like that. Look, a bit of visceral, venting of frustration at the election outcome is totally understandable and acceptable kind of thing. But in a strategic sense, it doesn't get you anywhere. It's working people in their majority are going to have to be convinced of a progressive vision for change. And the starting point is not to blame them for not being enlightened or being too, for being racist or sexist or whatever, is actually to have the dialogue with them. That's just the simple fact of the matter. Look, I feel pretty confident that the Democrat Party establishment will draw all the wrong conclusions and will conclude that they need to, to be more conservative and not go out on a limb and even propose even mild reforms or changes that would improve the lives of working people. I think you can be certain of that. I mean, they haven't got much basis on which to try and blame the left or anything like that. If for instance, Jill Stein, the Greens candidate, or other candidates to the left of the Democrats had got enough votes in particular states to have changed the outcome of the vote, then you could certainly imagine the Democrats howling and screaming about it was all the fault of people that should have blocked in behind them and how they've ruined their chances, that sort of stuff. But the bare statistics just don't bear that out anyway, so they can't actually run that argument, based on the maths. It's not a valid argument in a strategic sense anyway, because in the long term, in the United States, just like in this country, we actually need a political force that is pro-worker and pro-environment, and that means fundamentally anti-capitalist, and is centred in grassroots struggles for change. It's centred in class struggle, in workplaces, in communities, in the universities, in the schools, all the rest of it. That's what the United States needs, just like it's what we need here in Australia. I think the important thing here is to appreciate that while, yes, I think it's fair to describe Trump as a greater evil to the Democrats, the problem is it's precisely the embrace of neoliberal politics of austerity in the last 30, 40 years in all Western countries gives rise to Trump style politics and the far right, such as we've seen in Western Europe. So, you know, you can't fight Coke with Diet Coke. They're different versions of the same thing. I mean, okay, you can say one is worse for your health than the other, but they're both muck. To fundamentally confront Trump, you need a qualitatively different kind of politics. And, we know that Trump is a complete charlatan, and when he talks about standing up for ordinary people and draining the swamp and being against the system and all that sort of stuff, we know that's completely ludicrous, given that he's a billionaire. So he is the system. He is part of the system, and it's all just, bullshit to suck in the suckers. But that said, these Democrat politicians like Biden and Harris, and before them Hillary Clinton, who are just totally and utterly identified politically, economically, and culturally with the ruling class establishment, with big capitalists, is grist to the mill for Trump. It's just self-evident. I mean, they are, so in that sense, yes, in an immediate sense, you could have said that Harris was a lesser evil to Trump, but they are still the cause. They're the cause of the problem, and nonetheless. So you have to break from it strategically. You absolutely have to break from it, and that remains the same. The same in this country. The other thing that I think we should really bear in mind too is it's not just a question of people voting for Trump, and that it's people not voting at all. I mean, this is especially apparent in a place like the United States, where voting is not compulsory. So, the candidate that wins is the one that mobilises their base. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, because I only had a quick look at the US voting figures from this election, but Trump didn't win a whole lot more votes than he did last election. Like, in absolute terms, Trump's vote remained pretty much where it was, I believe, but the Democrats' vote went down. So in terms of people actually mobilising and voting, so the problem you've got there, I mean, what that indicates to us, and this has been a long range trend in all Western countries, basically, is there's a real disconnection and disenfranchisement and alienation from mainstream politics. There's a growing body of working people who just don't think it has any relevance to their lives and can't be bothered voting. They can't see the purpose. And it's hardly surprising that they were not inspired to vote for Harris. I mean, for us lefties who are, embedded in the struggle around Palestine, the fact that Harris supports genocide, just like Trump does, is kind of glaringly obvious. But more generally, much like the Labor Party in this country, the Democrats are just not prepared to even propose minor reforms around things like education and housing and healthcare. Even the sort of minor welfare state kind of reforms of the sort that we introduced in the late 50s and 60s and 70s, they're just not prepared to go down that path. So they've got nothing to offer, nothing really to offer people and to inspire people, other than we're not like that batshit crazy Trump. But that's not enough. For people who are disconnected and demoralised and disillusioned with politics and think it's all bullshit and why should they pay any attention to it, that's not enough. You have got to give people a reason to come out and vote. And, of course, the Democrats were just simply and utterly incapable of doing that. What's really noticeable is just how quickly these so-called liberal politicians who in previous years have expressed their horror at Trump, and who would have preferred Harris, because Harris is more in their mold. How adaptable they are. So and how easy how happily and easily they end up actually adapting to someone like Trump and being pragmatic about it, so to speak. I mean, I think that also provides us with an opportunity. By us, I mean the left. Just to say, look, the whole AUKUS deal was bad enough, and this just highlights how crazy it is for Australia to be utterly shackled to US foreign policy with someone like Trump in the chair, and use that as a basis to call for a break with AUKUS.